is this just fantasy? No, strictly speaking, it isn't. It's a mix of things. This is the Joe Kubert School presents first folio by the old Pacific Comics for the new era in comics. It claims. So this is a weird find I found in the bin, you could say, and this is just a really interesting little time capsule. This is from, I guess, from the early era, the early times for the Joe Kubert School, which is a school that instructs people on the ways of making comics, and specifically the kind of classic things like penciling, inking, thumbnails, lettering, storytelling, visual language, all that good stuff. Done by, or started by, the amazing Joe Kubert. Joe Kubert is a legend and somebody that I'll probably come back to because I'm sure there's some stories that I can share that he illustrated. He did Thor, who was like a caveman who fought dinosaurs, sort of. It was his own version of sort of a couple of different like pulp heroes. I mean, but that's the era that he grew up in, so he's going to do that. But anyway, all that to say, this is a comic that Pacific Comics was a publisher in the 80s, and they were a competitor, if you will, with Marvel and DC, and they courted talents that neither company could keep or keep exclusive, and there's a few things of theirs that they published that I'm definitely going to cover in more detail than, say, this. But they weren't long-lived. But there are a few notable things, especially fantasy-wise, that they published that I want to talk about. But anyway, this is a collection of work, and it explains it once we get past this cool cover. Look at that crazy shit on his helmet. What's going on there? Anyway, I like that they chose one of the fantasy stories inside to make the cover. Anyway, this little blurb explains that basically that this is a book with people from his current graduating class, and it has art of their own and stories of their own, I would assume. And this is just kind of like hey, here's some projects that people that I instructed work are here's some stories. It's a kind of like a senior thesis. I don't know. I have no idea where the source of these books is. I have some theories, and if you look at people talking about this book online, there's people talking some mad shit. They talk some serious shit about this book, and have been for a while. And the big accusation really is that Pacific Comics was just desperate to have shit to publish, and like especially new shit, original shit. And so this was just an attempt at that, to have some new original shit that they could put on the stand, just have there. And that is definitely what this is. There are some things that I think recommend it, but the one sad factor is that I feel like most of the people in here who don't have the name Kubert are not people that went on to have famous careers in comics. But maybe they had careers in other things like advertising or illustration, what have you. But anyway, there's some fantasy stories in here, and that's the only reason we're talking about it. So we have this first story here by Joe Kubert himself. Very nice art, no words, but it's basically this very tragic war story, and a guy and a puppy and another guy die. And war sucks. This is a Joe Kubert story from 1979, and this appears to be a 1983 book. So just had something lying around that you could add and fill 2 pages with. And what's fascinating, is that there's a couple of his kids in here putting out stories, and they're not even really particularly good. But they definitely go on to have careers. So anyway, this is one of the fantasy stories in here, The Crown of Thorns. And I'm not going to say much about the originality of the story, because what is originality anymore anyway? But I will just say there is some nice stuff going on here and there, art-wise and visually. Not sure what's happening with this helmet, though. But we get, this knight kind of going to this castle, and it's a secret place, and a priest told him, and then he slit the priest's throat, so he's kind of not a good guy. And anyway, he's come to this castle, and this feels like a story from like a House of Mystery or something like that, or Tower of Terror. And in any case, those stories are what they are. They're meant to be kind of just short and poppy, and you move on. A few of them have some staying power, and if that's not what you're about, you're not going to enjoy it. And anyway, that's what this is. This feels like. And he comes to this castle. He finds a secret way in, and there's this, heavily decolletaged lady chained up, and he breaks her free, and she's been, she claims that her husband was murdered, and they did horrible things. It's clear. It's definitely very amateur. The amateur person writing it. But it's got a lot of brevity to it, and that's the thing. That's the nice thing I'll say about it, is that it doesn't waste a panel or any time. And yes, even though it's like kind of a first run at it, it's still, I feel like, is something that like proves promise. I feel like they could have a future, and I can do some research and see how much Mike Chen and Ron Randall did after this. Don't know. But anyway, these are like the monks that had imprisoned her and killed her husband, and they're protecting this thing, this crown of thorns, and he chops through them. Some nice posing here. But they're like, "You fool, what are you doing?" And it's, and he's like, "This crown of thorns, we've been protecting it for 200 years from her." And he kills him, but then he looks back, and Our Lady's like a demon or something. And he picks up the crown of thorns, and it fires a laser at her. And she disappears and dies, but now he has to stay at the castle and protect the crown of thorns from her. I don't know. That's what it is. That's all it is. I do like some of the coloring here. I mean, I love the classic comic book coloring. I do a lot of work with my weekly web comic, 3-panel origin, in that kind of 4-color style. And I'm a big fan of that whole shtick. You can buy this book on my website, or this book of short stories that involve those wacky characters where I create an origin and tell it in 3 panels. Anyway, I like some of the coloring, and there's some cool like little things going on in the line work. And I also love these old school color holds, like with a blue line here, and then on the cover the red. I like that stuff, but is it great? No, it isn't. But if this was like a comic person's like one of their projects while they're in comic school, I would say hell of a job. Here are ways to make something more interesting, because like that's one criticism this gets leveled at it, is like they clearly were trained to draw, not to write stories. Not to write, and that's a bit mean, but it's kind of, I'd say it's fair. The storytelling, or like the stories themselves, aren't particularly I mean, this one's probably has the most dynamics in it out of all of them, and it's also it's got a laser crown. I don't know. Anyway, this ad for the Joe Kubert School is probably the coolest thing in it, art-wise. It's Tor there, I believe. Anyway, and then we get a Kubert, one of the Kuberts writing a story here. It's a sci-fi story. I'm not going to get into it, but basically it's like a drawing that they're doing. And the drawing escapes the page. Adam Kubert for you, folks. I don't know. And then this one's Andy Kubert. And he, there's something following him. And it's an alien. Most dangerous game. This color holds nice, though. Again, there's some interesting things going on here. Sometimes. There's this, I like this cover page for the dragon. And I really wanted to like this one, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. It's also the only one in here that's uncredited. Whoever did this didn't put their name on it. There's no, and I even tried looking up ahead of time who is the artist for it, you know, who wrote it or whatever, and could not get an answer on the interwebs. So maybe there's an answer somewhere out there in the world, but I couldn't find it. But anyway, it's called The Dragon, which should make me love it. And there's some nice little kind of fantastical stuff going on here. This fun little costumes that I enjoy. And I really do like this line work going on here. Like, I love like this kind of interesting squiggle pattern going on back here, filling the space. I like the lettering there. I think that's really good. I like just this whole cover concept, you know, and this kind of stylized dragon and this knight. And I like the hatching here on this thing. It's again stuff that they probably learned in school, obviously. And then we get into the story proper, where this king has hired this knight to save his community from what they say is a dragon. They're like, it set my house on fire, and it took my, I don't know, daughter, or just it attacked people. And so we get this knight kind of going out, and there's really interesting choices going on with the coloring. You know, I think that's interesting, but story. So yeah, and then he finally gets attacked he goes out hunting and he attacks the dragon, and we only get these kind of vague glimpses of it as the story happens, and there's something immediately that sets off alarm bells for me as a creator, that I'm like, this creature is not a dragon. It is a mundane creature that people think is a dragon, and that's the gimmick. And I'm right. But there is some nice, again, like there's some nice posing here. I love this like swinging motion here in this panel. This, his torn clothes. Looks like this thing kind of like punched him. He's terrified. A really cool pose right here. I love this extreme bending. It's just, I think whoever drew this, I think had promise, or like really should, they didn't have to not put their name on this, but like, yeah, he finally plants the sword in it. Hours later, Scarlet Dawn, he wakes up and he's alive, and he comes back, and everybody's like, yeah, you did it. And then so the story is he killed a dragon, but really he killed, you tell me what that is. I mean, I think it's supposed to be a bear. Like, it's vaguely a bear, and this sword is very big, and I don't know if that's very consistent with how he's been drawing the hilt beforehand, but whatever. It's fine. Again, first brush, but it's like, yeah, it's a bear. Like, it was a bear the whole time. It knocked over something and started a fire, and its hot breath felt like fire. I don't know. I don't think people were dumb enough back in the day to think a bear was a dragon. But this person did. Anyway, that's the last fantasy story. Everything else in here is not fantasy, so I'm not going to cover it very much. I'm just going to kind of zip through it. Here's like a wordless monster comic. I think this is another Kubert. Yep, it's Adam Kubert again. And then here we have Rex Lindsey doing, I guess, what, a Blade Runner story? A la Logan's Run? I don't know. Some not bad stuff in here, color-wise, and, like, I feel like, and I've heard of Rex Lindsey, so went on to do more stories like this, but still a TWA rocket ship, clever. Anyway, and then the last story here by Brad Joyce, which kind of looks like, I don't know, something that would be, as a backup story in Swamp Thing. But yeah, and he gets drunk and he starts tripping and he's dead. That's, yeah, I don't know, kind of cool trippy stuff there in the back, but also what? And Seasons of Wizardry by Carl Lundgren. Anyway, that is Pacific Comics presenting some stuff by some people. So, I don't mean to be kind of cavalier or mean or anything like that, but, like, it is what it is. There's some cool stuff going on here that kind of, like, made me want to talk about it at all, first of all. But overall, yeah, it is not great, and it's definitely, like, what we would term now as just content put out by Pacific Comics. But I hate the word content. It's disgusting. This is art. May not be great art, but it is art still. So we have Adam Kubert School presents the first folio. And yeah, an interesting find. I doubt anybody out there is going to need this for their collection unless they're like a Kubert completionist or a Pacific Comics completionist. There was no issue 2. There was no second folio either. And there were no, not to my awareness. So this was it. And that's it.